Okay, hello. So to start off, what I would like you to do is to pick 6 of these keywords and make sure that you have a definition for them. In a moment, I'm going to start reading off the definitions and you need to kind of tick them if you think that what I'm saying is the keyword that's on your piece of paper. Now, if we were in lessons, we would have a prize and we'd be playing all together, but unfortunately that's not going to quite happen remotely. But feel free to kind of draft on in any parents or family members that you've got in your house to help play as well. Okay, I'm going to start now by having a look and reading some of the definitions of these keywords. So hopefully you've now got 6 keywords written down and their definitions so that we can play this together. So, number 1, the holy book for Christians. 2, 3 in 1. The idea that God is 3 in 1. 3, a denomination of Christianity. 4, the idea that God is fair. 5, the idea that God ascended, well, Jesus ascended back up to heaven and back up to be with God after spending 40 days on this earth after his resurrection. The next one that I'm going to start to define is the idea that humans and God are at one. So due to Jesus' sacrifice, humans and God are at one. And then finally, the keyword I'm describing here is Jesus in human form. So God in human form. What is the key word for the idea that you've been made human, in human flesh? So hopefully one of those keywords were yours and you have won the keyword bingo. If there are any of these words which you don't understand or didn't quite know, it would be a really good idea to make sure that you've got some form of definition for all of them. To help you with that, on Show My Homework, I've created and I've made a list of all the key words that you will need for Christianity beliefs and practices. So please refer to that. It would be a really good idea to make some flashcards and revise and go through these keywords so that you really understand what each of them means. So today we're going to have a look more specifically at this idea of the incarnation. Now I know that we had a look at this briefly in the Trinity lesson. So again, if you're a little bit confused, go back and have a quick look through your notes. But incarnation means being made human or in human flesh. So as we know, when we had a look at the Trinity, Jesus is the human form of God. He is the incarnate form of God. So the word incarnation is the idea that Jesus has been made flesh. Okay, so it's a really, really important idea, and we're going to have a look at how that's so important and why it leads to ideas such as atonement throughout this lesson. Now, this quote that I've got in yellow, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. That's really important. Now, the Word is a nickname or another name for Jesus in the Bible. Now, the reason he's called the Word is because he is spreading the word of Christianity. Okay, it's almost a bit like evangelism. He is spreading the word and working through Christianity. So sometimes in the Bible, rather than writing the word Jesus, they will say the Word became flesh. So that little section there means Jesus became flesh. God was incarnate in human form when he became Jesus. And the last part of this quote, "and made his dwelling among us," basically means that Jesus lived with humanity. He was with humanity. He was on this earth. And if you skip now to the blue box where I've put in that underlined section, Jesus was both fully human and fully God. Now that is a really hard thing to understand. And again, there is just an element of it's faith. There are not necessarily always explanations for this, but it's really important that Jesus was fully human and also fully God, to be able to help restore the gap between humanity and God. And that gap was created with the original sin. So the story of Adam and Eve. It's really important that Jesus was fully human. So he felt what it was like to be a human. He felt upset, he felt tired, he felt hungry, he felt pain, and that's really, really important. And we'll have a look at that as we move on through the lesson. So on Show My Homework, you now have a sheet of paper with lots of different images of Jesus on. Now, if you've got the capabilities at home to be able to download it and to print it off, you can work off the sheet that I've provided. If you don't, and you can't print things off at home, please don't worry, because you can make some notes and jot some ideas down as we go through. Now, this slide is basically telling you what I want you to do for that PDF, that Word document that I've put on to Show My Homework. So you will see it's like a table, and on one side you've got all of these images, then you've got a column with biblical quotes in, and then you've got a column which is blank, because I want you to explain how that biblical quote or how that biblical section shows that Jesus was fully human. Now, I've done the first one for you as a bit of an example to help you go through this sheet, but if you can now continue to do the rest, that would be wonderful. There is also a challenge, so you can see in the pink little box there, why is it so important for Jesus to be fully human? Why is it so important that Jesus understands what humanity goes through if we're tired, if we're sad, if we're hungry, if we're feeling pain? Why might that be such an important thing for Christians to understand, and for Jesus to be human? Why is that so important? I would now pause this video and complete the sheet. Again, if you can't print it off and if you can't work off the sheet, then you can work in your books. You can jot down the biblical quote, and then you can say, this demonstrates that Jesus felt pain, or that Jesus felt tired, or that Jesus felt hungry. Okay, so there are alternatives if you can't print off that sheet. So take no more than about 10 minutes to do that, and then in that 10 minutes, if you do finish, try and access the challenge. Okay, so we're going to go through the answers to the worksheet that you have, or that you can access and kind of be going through in your book. So the first one is, "And as they sailed, he fell asleep, and a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water and were in danger." Now, this one shows you that Jesus slept, okay, because at the very, very beginning, it says, as they sailed, Jesus fell asleep. So he shows the human emotion, the human need to sleep and to rest. Not only that, later on in this part of the Bible, it goes on to say that Jesus was nervous, that he was scared, okay, because the boat is filling with water and that they were in danger. So it's a normal human reaction to feel a bit scared when you know that you are going to be in danger. The next one is, and after fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. So again, this one's really quite self-explanatory, but it shows that Jesus felt hungry. He felt the emotion of really needing food and really wanting food. The next two on your sheet, "And there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in what agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground." So again, this here shows you that he perspired, that he sweated. and that he needed strength. There were points in his life where Jesus felt sad and felt down and didn't know what to do, and the angels were the ones that were there to give him strength and to give him guidance, and he was praying for that strength and guidance. So not only did he show the human emotion and need to sweat and perspired, he felt a bit down and a bit low, and he needed that reassurance. The next one, but one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and at once there came out blood and water. So again, it just goes to show that Jesus bled. That this is really, really poignant, this bit here, because it shows that Jesus was fully human and that he did bleed and that he did feel pain. Then you've got, these things I've spoken to you, that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be full. So this demonstrates that Jesus felt happiness, he felt joy, he felt those types of emotions. And then, and he looked around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart, and said to the man, stretch out your hand. He stretched it out and his hand was restored. So this demonstrates that Jesus felt anger. He felt really annoyed and grieved at people who weren't perhaps living the life that they should be living. So based on all that information, what I would like you to do now is to pause this video in a moment and to write this paragraph out. Now I've given you parts where you need to fill in the missing words, and I've given you some hints. So some of the hints at the bottom are mankind, Mary, blood, aging and flesh. I've not given you all of the key words. Okay, so all of the words that you need to fill in. So there is an aspect, or there is an element of you having to think about what could go into that. So pause it, spend no more than about 3 or 4 minutes writing this paragraph out, please. And again, there is a challenge at the bottom. Why is it so important for Christians that Jesus experienced life as a human? Think about this more kind of outside of the box. Why is it important for a Christian relationship, for a Christian nowadays, to know that Jesus has felt and experienced situations and feelings that they are currently going through? Why is that so important? So here are your answers. Christians believe that the Son of God became flesh in order to be the saviour of mankind. Now, if you wanted to add to that, where it says became flesh, you could highlight that word and put in the key word of incarnate or incarnation, because we know that that is the key word that's required by AQA for you to understand. Jesus was conceived and born of a mother called Mary. He also experienced aging as he grew up. Jesus had to be human in order to shed blood for the forgiveness of human sins. Jesus was sacrificed and he needed to die as part of God's plan. A blood sacrifice requires a body of flesh and blood. In Hebrews 9:22, it states that without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. Now that last section there is talking about the restoration of the relationship between mankind and God. Now we know that the relationship between mankind and God was broken somewhat with the ideas of the original sin. So when Adam and Eve ate from the apple, ate from the apple. So when they did that, when original sin entered into the world, that's when all this pain and suffering and hardship entered into the world. But also, that's when the relationship between God and humanity was broken. So in order to fix that relationship, in order to try and mend and restore and reconcile the relationship between humanity and God, there needed to be the sacrifice of Jesus. On the next slide, I'm going to show you another key word. Now, if I was in school, I'd be drawing this on the board and explaining it to you. So I've tried to draw it on a PowerPoint presentation. So hopefully, as I'm talking through it, it will make a bit of sense. So imagine that this is kind of a bit like two hillsides. Okay, and on one side, you've got humanity on earth that's separated from God. Okay, because there's nothing in between. And then in the middle, you've got the cross, the crucifix, which Jesus was crucified on. Now, if we were to take that cross away, there is a massive gap between humanity and God, which people wouldn't be able to go over. But the cross, okay, the symbol for the crucifixion of Jesus, almost forms like a little bridge between humanity and God. It helps to restore this relationship after the ideas of original sin, which is why I've then got this little man running across the bridge. Okay, now this bridge is accessible for Christians, for people who have accepted Jesus into their life. It shows that the relationship between humanity and God is restored. Okay, and now in the yellow box at the bottom, I've got the keyword atonement. Now, if you were to split that word up, okay, into 3 different kind of sections, you've got at, one, meant. So atonement is the idea that Jesus reconciled the relationship between humanity and God with his sacrifice on the cross. Okay, so atonement means that humanity and God can become at one again. It's a really important idea that you need to know, but it's also really important that you can understand that that's why it's so important that Jesus needed to be crucified. And we'll come on to that a little bit more in more detail as we move on through the series of lessons. Now, that's that lesson done. It's a fairly short lesson. What I would like you to do is, the first link is a little bit of reading. It's very, very short, online document, which talks you through a little bit more about the incarnation of Jesus and why it's so important to Christians. And that, I think, is a really, really important link for you to read through. As you're reading, you can add to your notes from today, because the incarnation has influenced Christians all over the world, and that could be the basis of an exam style question. So please read that and make some notes. Then you've got the Memorise course, which I posted a link to a couple of weeks ago. If you don't have Facebook, that's fine. Again, you can use the list of keywords which I've made for you instead, and you can use this as a way to revise and memorise the keywords used for this section of the course. But well done. Hopefully you've learned something from this today, and we will be learning a little bit more about Christianity in our next lesson.